All right, everybody, welcome back into the Auburn Live Show. Appreciate everybody joining us. We got a special guest with us today, the brand new GM of Auburn football, Will Redmond. Will, what's up, man? How's that sound?
Justin, how you doing, man? No, it's great. It's tough to pinch myself every once in a while. This is such an incredible opportunity, and when you got a staff like this, a leader like Coach Freeze, it's hard not to be excited about going to work every day. So it's been really cool. It's been a lot of fun, and we're kind of in the middle here, kind of hitting our stride in June, although it's early, just in some of these visits, and so there's a lot to be excited about.
All right, we'll jump into it. Quick shout out to our sponsor of the show, Session Cocktail, downtown Auburn. If you haven't been there, right there on Magnolia Avenue, they make some great drinks. Go check out All Day Happy Hour on Mondays. They do trivia on Tuesdays. They do bingo on Wednesdays. So they got different stuff going on. And of course, the weekend is always a fun time to go before or after dinner reservations or something like that. Generally not a wait in the summer, so you're pretty good to go up there and get your name on the list and get in there. Obviously, it's also no stand up, no people standing around. It's booth seating and it's couch seating and bar top and all that stuff. So it's a great place to go have a drink, and we appreciate them being such great partners of Auburn Live and our show, Session Cocktail, right there downtown Auburn on Magnolia. All right, Will, let's jump into this, man.
Sure.
I guess you've been here a couple of months now. How's it? Give me some first impressions of maybe how it's gone, maybe what your expectations were, what you thought it might be versus how it's been different in just a short period of time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, this is Auburn, right? So your expectation is you're walking into a first-class organization with an elite fan base and a logo that gets you in the door with any student athlete you reach out to. And to be honest with you, that's exactly what it is, right? And so having the opportunity to recruit the caliber of student athletes that we're going after puts us with everybody in the country, and utilizing resources that Auburn has, the connections, just the notoriety within this state and within the Southeast, and then also this brand nationally. I think you even saw this staff go and pluck DeAndre Carter from Modern Day High School out in California last year. That's a top 5 program in the high school ranks, year in and year out that produces NFL talent. And, to bring in an offensive lineman of that caliber is a great opportunity. So you kind of see this coast to coast branding with Auburn that, not many programs can boast. And so for me, coming in here and knowing just enough about Auburn on a personal level to be dangerous, right? To have some history and tradition, if you will, in your back pocket. But it's all the things that you continue to learn. It's all the people you continue to meet. The Auburn family has just been fantastic to me and my family as we've gotten settled in here in the community and just loving every minute of it. It is. I always knew Auburn would be a place that I would love to work one day. Again, knew just enough about what Auburn was like, didn't really know what it was like to live here, and have just honestly been blown away by the community that we have found in such a short period of time. So it's been pretty cool.
Take me back to maybe the first discussions with Hugh Freeze. You were successful at LSU. You were doing great, and whatever that first call was from Hugh Freeze, or however that first reach out happened, and then you start talking. What were your initial impressions when you knew that he was interested and Auburn was interested, and maybe how long was the process of first time you heard they were interested to, okay, I think this is what I need to do?
Yeah, certainly. I received a text message, if I'm being honest with you, running out of the tunnel for our bowl game. We were playing Wisconsin in the ReliaQuest Bowl. I'm literally jogging across the field as we're getting ready to flip the coin and kick off, and got a text message that just said, hey, would love, from a staff member here at Auburn, would love to pick your brain on what it would look like to join us in this general manager or player personnel role and capacity. And I kind of stood there at the 40-yard line, getting ready to kick off this bowl game. But, truly worked with some amazing people in a great community, in a great place. When you think of, college football, LSU is certainly one of those places you think of, just like you think of Auburn. And wasn't really looking for anything, to be honest with you. Family very happy, that's first and foremost. And there was something kind of weighing on me to kind of learn more and more about it. From that moment on January 1st until my first day in the office, which was probably around, January 29th, that 29 days after that, it was kind of a full sprint. Had the opportunity to have multiple conversations with Coach Freeze where he picked my brain just philosophically on how I viewed roster management and roster building, thoughts on the portal, thoughts on, NIL and the world we live in. And I got to pick his brain too. And it was very conversational, off the jump. it was obvious to me why so many student athletes and their families, when they sit down with coach or they have a phone call, a conversation or a Zoom call, whatever it may be, FaceTime, that he genuinely is asking you questions where he wants to get to know the person. And then when he figures out that that's the person he wants in his building, right, he's an elite recruiter, he goes and gets them. And so I continued to be very, very excited about the opportunity throughout the process, and kind of prayerfully considered all the options. And ultimately my wife and I and our 2 kids, we made the decision to move here to Auburn. And man, it for me, the right time, the right place, wasn't looking for anything. In working with some wonderful people who I love dearly, and getting the opportunity to come here and meeting even more great people, and getting to be in a building you're so excited to come to work in every day, around folks that, just are pulling the rope the same direction you are, and want to dive in head first, and want to be able to bring elite prospects here and ultimately win championships and football games. That's the goal. That's why we're all here. Without student athletes, there ain't no reason for Will Redmond to be at Auburn. That's for sure. So bringing in elite kids, elite people was the goal. And that was established from the jump. As Coach Freeze talked with me through his expectations for the program and what he was looking for in this position, it all came back to the character of the individuals that he wanted to surround himself with, and the character of the people he wanted to put in his locker room. And that slowly started to solidify my belief that, like, man, this might be a real opportunity. And long story short, here I am.
Yeah, no doubt. For people that maybe don't know, like, they hear you're now the GM, and I guess obviously if you follow football, a lot of football fans maybe understand from a basic level what that means in the NFL.
Sure.
Like, okay, and they try to maybe translate it to college. It's a relatively new, I don't know if it's a new role. Maybe calling it a GM maybe is relatively new in college. You've probably been people that have done similar things. I feel like it started, a handful of years ago, maybe with portal, maybe just how college football changed. What is a general manager in your eyes when people hear Will Redmond is the GM and Auburn has this GM of Auburn football?
Sure.
What should that mean to them? How should they look at that position and what you do?
Yeah, certainly. I think in my role as the GM of player personnel, right, it is very much so the roster management, roster building, being in lockstep with Coach Freeze. In this role collegiately, probably more so now than ever, fits more of the NFL model. Just in the fact that your rosters are ever changing, right? I tell our staff all the time, I've told multiple people this, we are working in roster management, not, roster reaction. And
Right.
At times, if you're not careful, it can become roster reaction. If there's a player who you weren't necessarily thinking you were going to lose at whatever position it might be, if you don't have players lined up that are in the portal that you've had communication with, that about, to potentially replace a player who all of a sudden has decided, hey, this isn't the spot for me, I'm going to go somewhere else, maybe to play sooner, or to not be kind of a depth piece or a special teams guy, you have to be ready for that. And so transactionally, as it pertains to roster management, you have to oversee all of the functions that would get that closed. We've got an incredible staff here that I'm fortunate enough to lead, but we all work together on a daily basis to make sure that academics is being taken care of by our incoming guys, even the guys that we've identified in the portal. That's a vital part of it. Can they get into school here at Auburn? This is a highly acclaimed academic institution as well. It's not just an elite football program. You're getting a meaningful degree in a field of study that carries weight nationally. And so when you do that, there are requirements you got to fulfill in order to enter one of the colleges here on this campus. And so it takes a village to kind of pull all that together, and it's like speed dating, right? You get to know somebody very quickly, and now you're dating and you're trying to figure them out. You try and get them on campus, and then, hey, let's get married, and that's a crazy way to think of it, but it's true. And it takes a village of people to do that. I was brought here in essence to help oversee a lot of those things. We have so many wonderful people here in upper level management roles that do an incredible job. It's just my job to make sure in my field, to make sure the roster is remaining competitive to win championships, and we're bringing the right people on it.
Yeah, you mentioned the roster management. I mean, that's obviously the portal has just created this landscape of college football, and roster management is a beast to undertake.
It is.
How much did you sense from Coach Freeze? I guess how much of your role and what you do can take pressure off of him and a lot of other people. It feels like if you don't have somebody in your role, I mean, before you were hired, it was like I remember talking to people like, I don't know how you do it. If you're Hugh Freeze or the others, I don't know how you manage the roster and all the potential things that could happen with your roster and turnover. A guy could enter. You need it. There's so much to do. I don't know how you do it without somebody in your role. So I'm wondering how the dynamic's been with Coach Freeze once you've been on. Have you felt like have you seen him be freed up to do other things? Do you see that? Like, how big is that? And what, not only you doing a good job, but him being freed up to not do some of the things that now you do?
Sure. Yeah. And I would, what people need to understand about Coach Freeze, right, is he's one of the hardest working people in this building without hesitation. Like, this man sets the tone for this program every day when he walks through those doors, and he keeps the tone rolling even at night after he leaves. I mean, he is constantly thinking about this roster, this program, best ways to put us in position to win championships. And my role is simply to take and eliminate problems that would reach his desk, right? So if for instance, I can feel, or a coach feels like, hey, we'll go back to the portal example we used. Hey, coach, they come to me, Will, hey, this kid's asking a lot of questions about the portal. Well, we can have an answer, and we can start working ahead of time should XYZ scenario happen, to either replace that player or to make sure that, hey, if it's sitting down and having a conversation about, what does my future playing time look like here? Well, let's sit down and have those conversations. Let's eliminate problems before they make it to the head coach's desk, to allow him the opportunity to keep running the other functions of the program that he has to have his hands in, whether that be nutrition, academics, weight room, strength and conditioning with Coach Dom. I mean, there's a lot of pieces of this program that, as the head coach, he's required to oversee. So from a roster management standpoint, I was hired here, and I would argue that in any field of work, right, philosophically, I believe this, it's your job as somebody who works for a boss or an individual to eliminate problems and to make sure that you're providing the best possible product at every turn. And once somebody in upper level management, a head coach, an athletic director, a senior administrator, believes and knows that the decision-making process that an individual has that works below them takes problems off their desk and comes to the right outcomes, they trust and believe in that. And so, the first thing that was important for me was to earn Coach's trust. We hadn't worked together before, and I'm certainly going to walk in every single day to continue to earn his trust. And I feel like I'm doing that, and it's a fun way of delivering. I believe in delivering on promises, and I made him a promise when I took this job that he would never regret it. And that's a daily grind to making sure that we're providing him the outcomes that he wants. And if that takes problems off his desk and allows him to continue to mold and build relationships and to build men of character and to put men in Auburn uniforms that the Auburn family and community are going to be proud of, that's his ultimate goal. That's what he wants on a daily basis. And if that gives him the opportunity to do that, I know he does that at elite level. If I can bring any skill set that I have that might be elite in his eyes, I'm going to do that.
What are maybe some, I guess, or maybe some of the first things you did? You arrive here, obviously you got to get lay of the land. Once you get kind of past that, how did you go about assessing where the program is and then thinking about, okay, what are some things I've done in the past that I for sure want to implement? But how did you sort of go about assessing where they're at and saying, all right, here's the first, I don't know, think about it like when a president takes office, they're like my first 100 days. Like, how did you sort of think about going, all right, I've assessed, I kind of got where we're at. Here's the first 1 or 2 or 3 things that we got to do immediately. How did that sort of process happen?
Yeah, I tell everybody this. I'm the byproduct of some unbelievable people who have just professionally and personally poured into me. And because of that, I've had great mentors at the collegiate level as well as the NFL level give me insights into how things should be run at an elite level. And so, within the first week of taking a new job, what I've typically done is like you said, assess the situation and saw, all right, what are things that we're doing at an elite level that maybe I can come in and add a spin to it to take it to the next level. They're already great. They're already as elite and wonderful as they can be. What can I provide in my own spin to make things organizationally move forward? And so you find those things and you deliver for folks and you continue to build relationships with those people that ultimately, in a short order, if you deliver for folks, they'll start to trust you and believe in you. And so that was goal number 1, is to build trust with this staff. And goal number 2 in all of that is, and I worked for Rick Stockstill, who was the head football coach for 18 seasons at Middle Tennessee State, was with him for 3 of those in 16, 17, and 18. And he gave me a great piece of advice, kind of in my younger days doing this. And it was, hey, Will, the good Lord gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You ought to listen twice as much as you talk. And he's like, you might learn some things, instead of just throwing things out there in the wind to see if they stick. And that was his nice way of correcting me on some things as a young personnel guy in the game. And that was also a learning opportunity, something I'll never forget. Because when you listen, you figure out what makes people tick. You learn what are the things they want to see being done within the office, whether that's a position coach or coordinator or your head coach or other administrators around our building. You assess those things early and you learn ways to be organized, to communicate, and to execute. Right. My staff and I, we talk about those 3 things all the time. Hey, we're going to be organized. We're going to be diligent in our approach. We're going to communicate that organization out so that we can execute a plan at a high level. And I don't care what line of work you're in. That's something that I believe in wholeheartedly. And we started finding ways to implement those immediately when I got here, whether that's how we watch film, the type of film we watch, the organization of that film, the gathering of metrics. So height, weight, hand, arm, wing, speeds, shuttle times, vertical ability, what services we used. We kind of fine-tooth combed and assessed every level of this program from that perspective. And then I came in and met with my staff and said, okay, what are things you guys like? What are things we can change? Where can we get better? And what that came out to was a product that, I think at this point serves us really well. And each year we'll go back through and look for those items that we can get better at. You think about, at 211 degrees, right? And everybody's kind of used this analogy before, but 211 degrees, water's just hot, right? At 212 degrees, it's boiling and it can power a locomotive. So finding the 212th degree in everything we do is critical in making sure that we're pushing this thing to the next level so that we can win championships, be part of the playoff, win the SEC, beat our rivals and go on to doing great things under Coach Freeze. So that's a long way of explaining, when I first got here, I assessed the situation. The bones here of the roster were headed in the right direction, right? I loved what this class has produced in terms of what they were able to sign, being a top 8, top 7 class, depending on how you slice it up. And there are some players that were probably, quite frankly, underrated, who you're seeing run around out there who have got elite potential, NFL potential already as incoming true freshmen. And so all that's really exciting. And so you knew things were headed in the right direction. You knew there would be an elite plan from Coach Freeze to recruit individuals and win them and their families over and get them in this uniform. And so making sure we were on the right players and we were making sound decisions was the first part. And then 2, quite frankly, identifying the top talent in this state over multiple classes. The goal is to make sure that we take care of home. Anybody who knows Auburn football knows that here in the state of Alabama, if you went over this state, right, you got a shot to win national championships. We did a study coming out of the NFL draft between Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi. Just you take those 4 states, in our footprint, you've got almost a quarter of the NFL draft. We don't have to go necessarily nationally to go get great players. Will we go? We'll go to Timbuktu if we have to get a great player. We'll go anywhere. If it's the right character kid, he fits Auburn. He's an Auburn man. He has the character traits that we're looking for, both personally and football wise. We're going to go get that player, but we truly can win right here at home. And so making sure we were doing that as well was top priority.
Let's talk portal strategy a little bit.
Sure.
How do you sort of go about it? I mean, one of the things that when we talked to Coach Freeze, I guess, I don't know if it was maybe winter after the season, sort of getting ready for the bowl, and spring portal was coming up. So winter portal was happening. You're thinking ahead to the spring portal, but winter portal was sort of happening. And he talked about struggling with it just a little bit in terms of it's a different pace. I mean, he loves to build relationships, but in the portal, there's just, you can't. And so there was a lot of times where they would schedule a visit, but the kid would then make a decision before the visit could even happen. And he was very transparent, talking about maybe we got to rethink how we go about it. And maybe I need to be more aggressive or whatever it might be. What's your strategy when it comes to the portal in terms of whatever, how quickly you need to evaluate them, how quickly you need to get them on campus, how you sort of going about making sure that you're identifying really quickly, getting them on campus really quickly and things like that, because it is hyper aggressive in the portal.
Yeah, certainly. I think you look at somebody like Kenyatta Watson, who we were able to bring in from Georgia Tech. Kenyatta is a name that is synonymous with high school and youth football in the state of Georgia and certainly in the city of Atlanta. And Kenyatta is not only one of my favorite people I've ever worked with, but he is somebody from a relationship standpoint who at any moment has anybody's cell phone number. So as you're combing through the transfer portal and you have people in your building that have these deep relationships that span, in some cases, these kids are 18, 19 years old. He may know a player for a decade. They're 8 or 9 years old in youth league in a youth park, and he's known who they are. He is familiar with who those individuals are. He knows their families and their story. And in some cases, right, and when he was a high school coach, probably mentored that student athlete and helped them end up at whatever institution they might have ended up to continue developing before they decided to go in the portal for whatever reason. So that's a way, is having the right relationships, having people who know and understand what a recruiting board at Auburn looks like, and maybe what it's looked like over the last several years, right, with his experience at Florida State and in Georgia Tech. So you've got a lot of similarity between the players that you've recruited. So a lot of visits, a lot of contacts, cell phone numbers, high school coaching relationships. He's a Swiss Army knife. You have somebody in the building who can immediately get on the phone with those individuals in a New York minute. But I think also as part of that process, one of the things we wanted to do, especially when we got here, was you want to comb through college football kind of similarly to the way the NFL does with free agency, right? It's the job of the pro personnel staff and scouting department there to know who all the players are, right? So at any of their positions of need, if they need to go into free agency, they've already got an evaluation in their system, not only from when they were coming out of college and going through the draft process, but for us, when they were coming out of high school. So keeping that Rolodex of players hot and ready to rock and roll is important. So if we know, hey, we need to add a 15th or 16th alignment, whatever it might be, who are some of the guys out there that, as you assess rosters and look at them, maybe guys that were thinking about going to the portal, you've got their name sitting to the side. So the minute that somebody hits, hey, look, Will Redmond hit the portal. He's leaving. We're looking for an offensive lineman. Will was that. We really liked him coming out of high school. He just needed to put on a little bit of weight. Maybe he was undersized coming out. Well, he's put on the weight at whatever institution he was at. We've already got the evaluation. We've got relationships within the building. We can get a hold of that individual, and we can be relentless in the pursuit. So once they go in, it's all about figuring out and attacking with a strategy how you're combing through those lists, figuring out who the players are, and then from there, how do you get in contact with them, and hoping that you've got a pre-existing relationship with those individuals to get them on campus because they know and trust. Again, we talked about speed dating earlier. If you already know somebody, it makes it a lot easier to trust them. And we say all the time, if we can get a student athlete here on campus at Auburn, we got a really good shot. So,
yeah, there's no question about that. How, in terms of the portal, when you think about internal culture, one of the things that Coach Freeze mentioned last fall was trying to build a culture internally where kids don't want to leave. What are those discussions been like, and how important is that? I mean, it's like playing time's important, yes, but if you can get a player to believe in their potential at your program, stick it out, love the people, we can get you there. If you can get them to buy into what the future can be and also love the place, I feel like that's a huge thing. You don't have to give any trade secrets, but from a perspective, how huge is it to try to build something internally where the kid's like, well, I could start over here at a Power 5, but I don't want to leave. I think this is building me the right way.
Sure. Yeah, I think it all comes back to the word truth, right? Dealing in utter and complete truth, right? If you lie to a kid in the recruitment process, you promise him the world. He shows up, he's got a promising future, but he doesn't feel like those promises are being kept. It's hard to convince that student athlete to stick around, right? And so much of this nowadays is built on the idea of what's real and what's not. And Coach Freeze talks all the time, hey, we deal in truth. Mm-hmm. When we talk to the players, we deal in truth on our team. When we talk to our prospective student athletes and their parents, we deal in truth. We don't overpromise and underdeliver. We're telling these kids the honest truth every step of the way. And because of that, they know, at least without a doubt, when they have those tough conversations about what might be next for their future with our program or elsewhere, they know that they're dealing in that very word, truth. And when you trust and when you care about individuals, which is the total goal of transforming these kids into the men that they want to become, it's part of the reason why families choose Auburn and Coach Freeze to lead them, is because they want to grow in those ways. And student athlete, 18 to 22-year-old kids, I know I was this way. They want to be led. They want to have great people around them that are pouring into their lives in a positive manner. And they're checking the boxes, both, from a faith, family, and football perspective. And when you got a kid who fits that mold, right? And you're recruiting those kids and identifying those kids in the evaluation process as a high school student athlete, you've got a shot at retention, because those are individuals that our guys want to coach every day when they wake up. I tell our coaches that all the time. Hey, my goal is to bring you student athletes that every day when you wake up, you are so excited to pour into this kid from a faith, a family, and a football perspective that they wouldn't want to go anywhere else, because they know, hey, man, the grass ain't greener. The grass in Auburn is pretty green. This is awesome. And I feel loved and cared for, and I'm getting taken care of as a player. And I'm part of a community that loves its football program. And when you have those things and you recruit and identify the right people on the front end, you don't have as many of those problems on the back end.
What are, so far from kind of what you've been able to tell about the program, learning about the program, talking to people that have been there, done that, probably former players and all that good stuff, what can the differentiating factor be for Auburn? Like, I know I've done this for a while, and I've covered recruiting in the past. And so, like, I know what it was 10 years ago. Like, it was a lot. Auburn is a different place, and it's a different speed, and the people are different. It is a unique place. But now with the portal and NIL, like, I feel like sometimes some unique factors about places can be, I don't know, like, are they still important? It's a question I ask. Like, are the unique things about certain places still as impactful, or is it just, is that gone now? Like, how do you see the differentiating factors that Auburn can put out there? How do you see it?
Are those things diminishing? Yes. Are there things that now people bring to the forefront of their recruitment that they would say, hey, this is the most important thing? And they're pretty open and vocal about it. Yes, without hesitation, absolutely. You even touched on NIL. In some cases, NIL could be almost 80 to 90% of the decision-making factor. That's for that student athlete and their family to figure out. On our end, you can do the work to figure out who are the individuals that where maybe that is important, but it may not be 80% worth of the importance of it. If you can find the individuals that do have the ability as a player and as a person to monetize off name, image, likeness down the road, that's fantastic, right? And the NCAA sets these things up now to where student athletes can very much so do that. And you need On to Victory to be rocking and rolling. And we need all the help we can get in those areas, because it is important. It is the world we live in. But the individual that you bring in, it can't always just be about those things, because I think to a man, anyone you speak with about money, right? And we're just kind of pinpointing that piece of it because you alluded to it, right? It'll never be enough. Mm-hmm. I've never met anybody in any role where they're just super satisfied in the amount of money they make, and that there's never an opportunity to grow, and that doesn't entice them. That's not true. That's not realistic. And so, but you have to find people where that's not their number one priority. And so figuring out who is motivated by getting better at football is the key, right? We call that football character around this building. When you dive into the true weeds of who this kid is as a player and a person in their level of character, typically that tells you how they're going to feel about NIL from an NIL perspective. Is it real? Is it necessary? Is it out there? Absolutely. I'm not saying that it's not. What I'm saying is we can do our part as a scouting staff to find individuals where maybe that's part of the equation, but it's not the 100% reason they're going to choose Auburn.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I would imagine that, when you speak to a player or, prospective student athlete, if he mentions whatever he mentions first, or let's just say NIL is the most important thing, then I always get freaked out, because I'm like, if that's the first thing they mention, what in the world are my chances of even retaining him? Even if I got him and we just said, fine, we'll just do the NIL thing. What are the chances I'm going to retain him in a year? That's such a scary proposition. I feel like it's just starting a relationship. And if the first thing they mention is something specific, you're like, well, okay, so that's clearly the most important thing. And that's not, that could bode, it could tell you what the future is going to look like.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to look at it.
It's a great projection into what your future conversations may look like. Absolutely.
From a recruiting standpoint, huge weekend. You guys just had a bunch of big time prospects. Heard some interesting comments from some of them in terms of the most detail they've ever seen in a visit, and things like that, which was an interesting. I hear a lot of things. I rarely hear a player go, it was the most detailed visit. I think that says something about the prospect for sure. But it speaks, I think, to what you guys are doing. I guess what's your reaction after probably one? I mean, is it the biggest recruiting weekend since you've been here? Or I mean, how big was that? How was your reaction post pretty monstrous summer weekend?
Yeah, certainly. I would say this: if you're on an official visit to Auburn, you're a priority, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're a high priority, and so the expectation is every weekend you knock out of the park. And Bianca Webb and her staff, from our on-campus perspective, those ladies do an unbelievable job of making sure that these families are comfortable, they're getting all the information they need, as well as having the interactions with not only our staff, our staff's wives, their significant others, players, everyone around them, but making sure that the Auburn community is also, taking great care of them, whether it's the academic community or the hotel staff that, they may meet, they need to know that they're a priority here for Auburn football and thus a priority for the university. So when I hear things like that, where a student athlete may say that, hey, it was the most detailed, organized visit ever, I mean, that's a kudos to our on-campus staff, our coaches, in building out an elite itinerary, their knowledge of that individual, right? I would say, again, pointing back to what we talked about earlier, that individual who gave you that quote, I would say that we know in and out very, very well, because the work has been put in by the coaches, the assistants, Coach Freeze, our recruiting staff, our personnel staff, to deliver on the promise that their visit to Auburn is going to be different than others, and it's going to be special for XYZ reason. And so you can't get to that point without it being, a very personable experience. And everybody's going to stay in nice hotels. They're going to eat steak dinners.
Yeah.
They're going to, visit with the head coach. They're going to talk academics, like all that good stuff. But what are you finding? Again, what's the 212th degree that gives you the opportunity to push this thing over and power the locomotive of this kid's recruitment towards Auburn, Alabama? And so when you do that and you have great people at every turn around this building, you're going to hear me say that a lot. I'm constantly blown away by the incredible folks we have around here, the staff that Coach Freeze has assembled. When you have all that, it's a winning edge, and it gives you the ability to win these kids over in their recruitment.
What does an OV weekend look like? I mean, for people that don't, they just like, okay,
Sure.
they're probably like, well, they probably tour the stadium and they talk to the head coach.
Yeah, no doubt.
What does it look like arrival to departure?
Yeah, from the time you step foot on this campus, and I'll kind of give you the generic overview of it. The NCAA grants us the opportunity. We get one opportunity with a student athlete, starting in the spring of their senior year, or their junior year, going into their senior year, to host them and their family for 48 hours, right? So that gives us the opportunity to pay for their travel, their meals, their room and board throughout the 48-hour stay. And what it is it's an opportunity, and how it used to be is in December it was the final push. That was the closing deal. A student athlete can only take 5 visits up until this past year. And now they have an unlimited amount of visits they can take. And because of that, weekends book up quickly. And with more and more student athletes making decisions here in the summer months so that they can go and have fun and play their senior years without having to worry about it, you have to move up your timeline as a recruiting and personnel staff and as a coaching staff to make sure you accommodate those timelines to fit when a kid comes on campus to close this thing out earlier, even though you've got a couple months now till signing day. But you're going to see it all, right? You're going to see everything that a place like Auburn has to offer, again, from an academic standpoint, first and foremost, right? It's student athlete, not athlete student. It's important. These kids are seriously considering Auburn, not only because of the athletic tradition here, places like Jordan-Hare Stadium and how it rocks on a Saturday night under those lights with that student section and band rolling, and just a history and tradition of being one of the toughest environments to play in college football. But you've also got the academic side of this thing. And so, for instance, if you've got an architecture student that's coming, that has interest in getting into that realm, well, gosh, I mean, from an architecture standpoint, Auburn's one of the best undergraduate programs in America. I mean, if that's important to a student athlete, we're going to win that battle. And so we leave nothing to chance and make sure that they're seeing every side of that facility and getting to meet with different folks, professors within that college, and give them a deep dive into what it would be like as a student athlete here, working through the academic portion of their day as well as the athletic portion. And that includes strength and conditioning, some nutrition conversations. Now our guys are able to still take official visit photo shoots. You got to be on the official visit to take the photos, which is easily the best rule that's happened in the last 15 years of the NCAA, if you ask me. Kind of knocking out some of those things so that people that look like me don't end up in an Auburn uniform in a photo shoot, because that's not ideal. But you get the opportunity to do that, and then those guys get to spend quality time with the other student athletes on your team. There's not a better set of recruiters or ambassadors for your program than the guys that are in your current locker room, right? Because they also give us feedback. Hey, this guy fits, or hey, I don't know that this guy necessarily fits. I don't know. He's kind of interesting. What do you guys see in him? And so, again, as part of that trust, like, we trust our guys to give us great feedback on these visits, and they're not spies. They're just talking to us about what they, how the kid was, what he was like when nobody was around, right? Give us more detail into their personal character. And typically at that point, it comes back pretty positive, which is really cool. So we take a lot of time into that. But yeah, I can go through about a litany of reasons why each visit's different or what makes it unique. But you're going to eat really well. You're going to sleep good. You're going to travel in style, and you're going to get to see Auburn from a unique perspective as a student athlete like you never have before on your official visit. And so for those 48 hours, man, it's full go, and getting to show off Jordan-Hare Stadium and do the light show and show the video board and get to show them what it would be like to walk around these halls, to see where our guys live over on campus, and then what some of their apartments look like, maybe off if they're a student athlete who's their host lives off campus. It just continues to kind of clear the fog of confusion in the decision-making process for them, and gives them the opportunity to help best put Auburn in the right foot and frame of mind to potentially add a commitment to the class.
I'm going to ask you this question, and feel free to answer how you want.
Sure.
How quickly, because I don't want, you don't have to, I'm not trying to pin you down, but in this day and age, how quickly, what's a realistic expectation for fans to expect the Auburn roster to look like the best in the country the past however many years, whether it's Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, what we all know, the programs that have been so good for the last however many years. What's a realistic expectation for the Auburn roster to look like that with the portal and high school? Obviously, with the portal, you can really turn a roster over. I think Auburn's roster this year is already looking so much better. I remember when Freeze, when he first got here, he talked about those first three classes were just unbelievably important. But if fans are looking at this going, all right, we've been on 1 year, you're now entered, established staff turnover, sort of still building the infrastructure. How quickly can things turn, and what's like realistic for how people view the talent on the team and what it should look like in 24 or 2025?
Sure. Fair question. And I think I'd be lying to you if I said I knew the answer to that.
Yeah.
The tough part and the reality, and I'm not trying to dodge it, but the tough part and the reality of it is the guys in that locker room are going to have to take the coaching and go do it. Yeah. And it's kind of up to them to do it. And when you bring in the right people with the right character and the right football mindset, it can be done sooner than later, but to say that I know a date or I can tell you a year when it's going to happen, I don't. And I'd be lying to you if I did. And so in the spirit of being as truthful, right, in kind of the essence of this program and speaking truth over things, I tell you, I got no clue. I just know this. If we attack every single day and keep working to bring in the best student athletes we can here possible, you bring in some guys like Cam Coleman, it'll certainly help.
Yeah, one of the things I mentioned, I think Auburn's sitting at 10th in the On3 rankings, whatever, right now in 2025. And I'm like, the way it is now, obviously expanded playoff, the SEC is 16 teams. If the SEC is so crazy good, I know you want to be number one. I get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you're in the top 5 to 7 in the SEC every year recruiting, you have got good enough talent to be in the playoff, and you've got good enough talent probably to be in Atlanta. Like, the SEC is going to be so loaded, and if you're top 10 or 12 nationally, you absolutely have got the talent, I think. So, like, of course, you want to try to get the number one class, as much talent as you can get.
Sure.
But I think people sort of have to reset expectations to me a little bit of like how loaded the SEC is now in terms of talent, and okay, where's a good landing spot for Auburn on a yearly basis to go, okay, if we do this consistently, the talent's going to be there to win championships. I don't know how. I know you guys are like players,
no,
but
certainly, and I'm probably the wrong person sometimes to ask that question to, because I'm so much about fit, and schematic fit, and personal character, and football character. Like, I want dudes who are football fanatics.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't wake up every day thinking about getting better, and hopefully what that means for you is getting to the National Football League, like, you're not going to fit in Auburn. You're just not. So whether that kid's a 95 rated 4-star or he's a 92 rated 4-star, and that drops your class from the 7th spot to the 8th spot, and he's wired right, then it's irrelevant. And while I know all those guys who do, I've been fortunate enough to be very good friends with a number of folks that have some of the evaluation pull there, even at a great place like On3. Like, they have a job to do in ranking folks, and that makes total sense. But they can't rank everybody as they would fit everyone's roster. That's not fair to those individuals, right? And so, and those guys do an incredible job, the majority of the time. I mean, you just look at some of the stats that On3 was able to do. I saw some tweets from Shannon Terry in regards to this past year's draft. I mean, very impressive work by Charles and Cody Belair and those guys from an On3 scouting department perspective. But it doesn't necessarily mean that all of those student athletes are just plug and play guys that would fit Auburn, right? And so while winning signing day is important, I'm in this thing for winning championships and hoisting trophies. Like, I had a family member several years ago on National Signing Day hit me up and say something that was along the lines of like, man, it's National Signing Day. It's your national championship. And I remember saying very quickly, like, well, no, the national championship is my national championship. Like, what we do today is gonna take us one step further to that dream and that goal. But we, yes, the student athletes we bring in should have the ability and the ceiling to bring us to a national title, but we got to get there. We got to grow to that. We got to get there. And these guys have to come in and develop and buy into the work being done in the weight room, as well as everything going on within, a university community, to do the right things, to be the right people, to go out and do what we need them to do on Saturdays in our home stadium to win ball games. And while National Signing Day is important and rankings make a lot of sense and they're fun for fans, we're looking for fanatical football players who are the right fit. And that's as honest as I can be in that regard. And while also tipping my cap to the work that's being done by the scouting departments all across multiple platforms on the internet.
Yeah. Those signing days are the foundation. You can't build the house without it.
No question. No question.
So you got to get there. All right. Well, let's end on this. How excited are you for summer? Should be a busy summer for camps and visits. And then I mean, you're not far from your first game. Like, are you starting to think about a fall and a season in the games in Jordan Hare Stadium and what this team can accomplish? Like, how excited are you about that?
Yeah, I mean, on a professional note, I think getting through the work you're doing, right, the work that you're doing in the summer months now are the things that are going to ultimately lead you to the success you have in December for National Signing Day. And so you got to put in the work now, knowing that the end goal is December. We're going to have us a National Signing Day, and we're going to sign a class of individuals that Auburn people are going to be really proud of, and then our rivals are going to be worried about. That's the goal, right? It's we're going to do everything we can in these months to grind it out to make sure we earn the right recruitment of the right players and get them into this class, and that'll be fun. So I love this time of year because for us, it's our opportunity as a personnel and recruiting staff to make a massive difference, right, in helping us win football games on Saturdays. The fall is kind of tough for me because I love game day. I mean, I can't say enough about what a fall Saturday in this conference is like, having been a part of it my whole life. But it's hard because I don't get to necessarily handle the outcome. So I view it as kind of, this is our game day. We're getting to help with the future outcomes of football games with the work that we do in this grind of June into bringing us success in December. Like you said, foundationally, that's signing day for your roster, for your future roster. And so doing everything you can now to bring in players that make a difference. And one of the things that I love so much about the transfer portal, right, is everybody wants to talk about the negatives about it. Well, let's talk about it from a positive. We can impact our roster right now to win games now. And so even these individuals, the guys we were able to bring in the spring portal window, have an opportunity to help us win games now. So, some of these guys make a sack or catch a touchdown pass, and that helps us win a football game. But you got to touch the roster instantly. In the past, you had to wait a couple of years and let guys grow and develop to get to that point. And sometimes in this profession too, you never even got to see the payoff of those players kind of hitting their stride as collegiate athletes to go win games. But yeah, all that to say, professionally, couldn't be more excited about what this month is going to bring, how it's going to lead into a great, successful December and an awesome fall. And then personally, just the opportunity to be in Jordan Hare Stadium, be with my family on a Saturday is pretty cool, pretty special, something I've dreamed about my whole life. So looking forward to it.
Well, yeah, great spring portal class, by the way. I think absolutely a bunch of dudes are going to make an impact immediately. And that's something I think it's even changing. Spring portal's been like,
no doubt.
Who can you get in the spring portal or who's left? Man, I mean, I thought y'all crushed it. I was surprised. I mean, not surprised. I don't want to say it like that, but who's out there. I don't. I was like pleasantly surprised. Like, oh, I think they made got a bunch of impact guys that are going to impact wins and losses this fall. Absolutely.
Well, that was certainly the goal. So hopefully you're right. These guys got to go do it. So hopefully they'll prove us right.
All right, Will, man, I appreciate you joining us. Appreciate you having. I'm glad you're in Auburn. If anybody watching the show sees you out, say hey to Will and welcome him. And I think you're going to do big things for the program. Interested to see sort of the ascent that they're on right now. Appreciate you, man. Go to auburnlive.com, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Check us out at auburnlive.com and all the coverage we have there, and subscribe to YouTube if you're watching us there. Until next time, we'll see you. Bye.